Ray, again, thank you again for being on the podcast. The last time you were on the podcast, I greatly appreciate our conversation. Um, and so, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. I'm excited for the conversation and to share some more stories.
Yeah. And so, before the camera was on, we were talking about relationship building and how important it is, not just with students and students with difficult behavior, but if you work in a school system, you work with people, you have to build relations with them. And so, um, let's start there. Let's
Yeah,
start with a relationship. Um, how important in your career has relationships been?
it's
Relationship building.
it's been everything. I mean, it's probably the thing that I have learned the most about through my career in education. And I say that because of my own personal kind of story. You think about think about your childhood, and I think I watched one of your other podcasts before when you were talking about your childhood and how your dad might
Oh
say
yeah,
certain things to you and your brother, and
yeah.
you know that was the kind of relationship that I had. Right, that's what I knew with my parents. Like my dad was very stern, and you got to do your schoolwork, you got to do this, or here's the consequences. Right, and my mom was very giving, and so I had the dichotomy of those
Hmm.
things. And so that kind of model is what I you get a relationship idea from. And they did the best they can for sure. But when you get out of college, when I got out of college and I first started teaching, I didn't know how to build relationships with people. I didn't know how to manage a classroom of
Yeah,
kids.
that's right.
You, you, you barely know how to manage yourself and how to build a good relationship with yourself. And so one of the biggest things that I took away from that first year was I had some I remember one student, right, that I had in my class, and at that time it was more of a taker kind of relationship. I have like categories for me, like taker.
Yeah.
Like I just want it from them. Like you
Hmm.
got to sit in class, you got to behave. If you get out of line, you're out of here, kind of deal. Because that's kind of what I knew. I thought that was the best way. And I had one kid where we had a big blow up, and I kicked him out of class, and I walked out, and I was going to have a conversation, and it got very confrontational. And I was 21 years old, high school math teacher, and this kid's probably 6 years younger than me. And we got into it, and I ended up sending him to the office, and that was the last I saw of him. He quit school.
Wow.
He quit school after that moment. And I had to decide, it really hurt me because that wasn't my intention.
Hmm.
And I had to decide, like, what kind of person do I want to be? Did I really know that kid? Did I know their story? Did I know what they were going through? Um, and so I had to make some changes in some approaches that I had. So I had to start learning how to build relationships. And that was in small groups, like having kids stay during lunch and talking to them about what was happening, having kids stay after school when we got in a conflict and not really dealing with it in the moment and saying, hey, you're going to stay with me and we're going to kind of talk it out. That was the best way that I knew to do it. But it helped me to understand that I had to understand them before they would be able to follow what I was asking them to do.
Yeah. I feel like you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to listen when you're building those relationships. You have to be able to put other people first when you're building those relationships. And when I think about my parents growing up, and go back to my parents, and again, I spoke about my dad. Like he was very stern, but I knew that he was doing it for a good reason. He was trying to keep me in line. He was trying to make sure that I don't stray off and go into this path that I could never get out of now, and he was just trying to, and he almost dedicated his life to just like, no, I'm going to hold that hard line for my brother and I for as long as I possibly can hold that hard line and be an example of what a good father should be, what a good man, and his version of that. And it worked. I used it as a model for a long time. And just like you, my mom, she raised us. religion was her thing. She would take
Yep.
us to church. She would
Hmm.
take us to church on Sundays, you know. She'd try to get us a youth group, and she would try to take us to church on Wednesdays, you know, and I'll try to get church almost every day of the week if she
Yep.
could, you
Same
know.
here.
Yeah, every day of the week if she could, you know. And at the time, I hated it. I was like, what is this? I want to stay home with dad. Dad don't even go to church. I want to be like dad.
Yeah.
Dad sits there and he watches the game, and that's what I want to do. I don't want to go on Sunday. I want to watch the football games on Sunday. But my mom would just drag us to church, drag us to church. And, you know, as much as I hated going to church, a lot of that stuff stuck. And when I needed help, it was like the Bible. Let me look into the Bible. You know, I go to Sunday school and they'd always talk about the Bible, and I'd go to regular church, and let me see for myself what that means for me and how can I apply it to my life. And so both my father and my mother did their very best to try to raise me to be a good man, and both sides were beneficial. For me, it's easier to talk about my dad's side, like my dad, and he was hard, and so like that. It's for me, and it's harder for me to talk about the softer end, where like my mom tried to get me to go to church and taught me about God. And to me at least, that's for me when I think about it, that's like the softer side of things. And she was more kind, and um, but both helped me to be the man that I am. And you know, they put themselves last. They were trying to raise two hard-headed kids, and you know, we grew up poor. We didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. We grew up around kids who were in gangs and did drugs, and you know, we got friends that died, you know, murdered. And but my parents were like the stable rock. They were
Hmm.
there to, you know, and so I understood that about sacrificing yourself for somebody else's well-being. And you know, it's funny. I had this conversation with my wife the other day. She was like, "What's your love language? What's your love language?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know what my love. I don't even know. I know there's like love languages, right?"
Yeah.
And the only thing that come to my mind was like, "Well, I protect the things that I love. I
Hmm.
protect the things that I love because that's how I was raised. You know, you protect the things that you love. My dad protected my family. I felt like my mom did her best to save us. I'm gotta say,
Hmm.
I want to save them from hell, from hell. You know, like I'm gonna save them from hell. And so, you know, she did her best to protect us in that way. And so, in my mind, you know, I'm like, well, I need to protect. I need to get out there and protect people and make sure that they're taken care of. And that's what I knew going in as a first grade teacher when I was 22 years old. It was like, all right, these are my guys, these are my kids. These are my kids, and the way that I know how to connect to them, the way that I know how to build a relationship with these guys is just protect them. Make sure they're
Right.
safe. Make sure that they're safe and they're learning, they're healthy, you know, and we're all feeling good in here. We're all feeling good. And I really didn't even know what I was doing.
Hmm.
Like it was just like that just came natural. Like, okay, yeah, protect you. Your parents protected you and they try to keep you safe. You do the same thing in the classroom with these guys. And then that's how I started to like build those relationships. And it started off with kids. Like, okay, I can build a relationship with these kids. It's easy. And it was harder for me to build a relationship with adults at the time when I was 22 years old. Plus,
Hmm.
everybody was older than me. Like all the
Right.
teachers were like older. I'm 22. I can't really relate to some
Right.
of the things they're going through. And, you know, there was 40-year-old teachers there and, you know, in their late 40s. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
You could be my mom. You know, like it's
Yeah.
possible, you know. So um but that's how I started with relationship building, was that gave me the model. I had a model to go after, you know, to mirror. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that. And I wish I had the intuitiveness and intelligence to grapple on to what you connected to because that is a similar dynamic that I had. Very poor, lived in from the city of New York in a very high poverty area, in projects, and then moved to the country where it was still high poverty,
Yeah.
but nothing around, and just family, and everybody knew everything about everybody. But my mom was still that rock of God and church, and make sure that you're reading your Bible, and treating people the right way, and trying to understand, and and hold yourself to a standard of how you're going to treat people, right? And so when I talk about that moment with that student, that's what snapped back in my head. It wasn't that I, you know, didn't. It was I felt guilty that I was treating somebody like I was taught not to.
Yeah.
But I didn't know at the time. It was more about fear. I think that's where some things come from, right? You're in front of kids that are older. They're
Hmm.
not too far from my age. Like, it's like I got to control the situation.
Yeah.
But to control the situation, I didn't realize at the time, and I've learned through kind of my journey, is really through investment in them, right? Understanding them. That's another kind of relationship term I use. It's like you got takers that just want, just give me, give me, give me, and I just get mad at you if you're not. And then you got investors who really put in energy into you and want to see you succeed authentically. And that's why I have standards. That's why I have values. I had to learn that more in my second in my second role, as when I moved from that school to transition to another school in another state, and it was a tougher neighborhood. It
Yeah.
was students that their parents weren't working multiple. They were working multiple jobs. The kids were going home by themselves. Kind of take brothers taking care of brothers, and parents not very involved in the school, doing the best they can, right? Doing the best they. I know that. Like, my parents worked two jobs, and I was a latchkey kid
Hmm.
myself, and so
Hmm.
so when I got there, it was more chaotic in the class, right? Like, I couldn't just be like sit in your row and do your math, and do your work. I had to learn how to create structures and systems that work for them.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to have high standards for them, and not have be sympathetic, and say, oh, they can't do it. Their parents,
Hmm.
don't aren't really involved, and I'm just gonna give them stuff and make sure I don't cause any issues. I don't want any conflict. I don't want kids getting mad and upset. And that happened at the beginning, and I had to change because it was getting out of control. And so, I had a coach come in and help me and kind of revamp my class and be like, look, here's your standards. Keep your standards. Here's how you're going to explain it. Be very clear in your directions. Like, I think you have one of these. That I saw another one of your TikToks where you were talking about, like, how to get kids to work in groups and what to teach them about
Mm.
how to work together, and
Hmm.
how to hold each other to a standard. And you said some other things, but
Yeah.
you really were clear about what those things. When I say, you know, you're gonna include everybody, that means everybody at the table is gonna talk. Everybody's gonna have a chance. You're not gonna keep them from talking. Everybody has to talk about that thing. Really explaining and modeling what those things look like for kids that don't have those experience and didn't have those models is really critical in those situations where a kid might be struggling in class. They're just not clear on what you're asking them to do, is what I learned from me. And I had to change and get more clear with my directions of what respect mean and what that looks like to us,
Yeah.
and how we speak to each other, and not in saying, I'm not, you're not going to curse in here. That's not going to be upset. You're not going to curse at each other. We're not going to do that. You're going to, if you get upset, that's part of it, but we're going to talk about how to work through that so that you can hold yourself to a standard of excellence. Because that's what we're trying to do. Have you be excellent for you, not just for me, because you deserve to be excellent for you. And so I think that's important in the relationship building. It's investing, but also holding to a standard and being clear about what that standard looks like for kids.
Yes, the whole holding to a standard thing is so important. Like I feel like it takes courage. It takes courage for you to hold somebody to a standard, right? You're the classroom teacher. You're the educator. It takes courage for you to be you're like, no, this is how it's going to be in this classroom. This is what we're going to do, and you do it with force.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do it with like some strength, right? You do it with voice. You do it with your body language. With your you say this is what it's going to be, and that's it.
Right.
And that takes courage. But courage, when you speak like that, when you speak to a group of people, a group of kids, and you say with some courage and authority, it touches hearts. It touches hearts, and then it opens ears, and then they're like, okay, maybe there's something behind. Let me listen a little closer. Maybe there's something here. Maybe I could. And you start to open up. You start to listen. And so, like, if you're in the classroom and you say, like, oh, stop cursing over there, guys. Come on, please. You guys got to stop over
Mm-hmm.
there. There's no strength behind that. There's nothing behind that. Oh, come on, guys. You're not supposed to do that in the classroom. Come on, guys. Stop doing that. Come on, please stop. There's nothing behind that. And so it's just like Charlie Brown, like want. It just means nothing. And it's not until you state it clearly, like you said. We're not going to use derogatory language to one another in this class. So I'm just going to tell you guys that right now. I'm going to put a stop to it immediately when I hear it. I just want to tell you guys right now. And the reason why we do that is because we respect everybody in this
Mm-hmm.
classroom. Everybody in this classroom is important. Everybody, not just myself or not just the person that's the loudest in the classroom. That doesn't mean that person is important because they're loud. Everybody's important in this classroom. So I'm not going to allow anybody here to be mistreated in this classroom, and I'm not going to mistreat anybody in this classroom. And if
Mm-hmm.
I do, call me on it. If you
Right.
see me be disrespectful to another student, call me on it. That is powerful,
Yeah.
right? That is powerful
Mm-hmm.
you're just like laser sharp. This is how it's going to be, and in the classroom, this is what I expect. And man, you could touch a heart. You could change. You could just change your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe that's years of experience that you just saw right now with me. Like maybe but if you have that conviction in your heart, like, man, I just got to do it. As the educator, you have to practice that. You have
Yeah.
to practice having a voice. There's times where I'm in, like, I've seen this throughout my years of out of the classroom. It's been, what is it? 1, 2, 3. It's been 4, 5, 6. It's been 7 years out of the classroom. I spent 7 years out of the classroom, and I could walk in the classroom and the teachers that have no voice, they're like, all right, guys, take a seat,
Mm-hmm.
guys, take a seat. They're gonna get eaten alive.
Yeah.
They're gonna get eaten alive. Take a seat, guys. Come on, make sure you pull out your bag. And they repeat themselves over and over and over again. Oh, they're gonna get eaten alive.
Yeah.
They're gonna get eaten alive, and I see it. And like you were saying, it has to be clear. You have to state it clearly. You got to state with some sort of voice, some sort of conviction, and you got to explain why. And your why should always be because I care about you and I want
Right.
the best for you. That's why. Because I
Mm-hmm.
need you to be the best version of yourself. That's why I'm saying these things. I want you to grow up so your family is proud of you. So there's a legacy, so that your younger brother could be like, that was my older brother was in this classroom. He did well in your classroom, right, mister? Yeah, your older brother was great. And you're going to be great too.
Yes. Right.
So
Yeah.
that has to be done.
Yeah. I love how you said that. And it's so true in terms of the saying it with conviction and saying why, right? Why? I think that's the part that gets missed sometimes. Like when people are redirecting behaviors, and I'm guilty of this too. Like if I say sit down, okay, the, okay, I need you to sit because it's for you. It's your benefit. It's not because I am teaching and you need to sit because I can't get through the lesson. It's because, yes, this information is important for you to be successful. And I need you to sit right now so that we're safe and that we can hold each other to the standard of excellence.
Mm,
You can be better than that. You are better than that. I know you can. I've seen you do it before. This is just a moment. Don't let this moment ruin the rest of the day.
yep.
So really getting into them and pouring in value in their worth and that they can and you believe in them is something that I think gets missed sometimes when we're redirecting. And I say that because just like you said about 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 having years of experience, right? And maybe it comes from that. I really think it personally, I think from my own experience, it comes from this fear of conflict. And that I know I felt this before, like, I didn't want to be the angry black man walking around the school, right? I didn't want to have that feeling. And so sometimes I would avoid those emotions and because I would think I would get out of hand. And so what happens sometimes when it gets to a point where you are working with kids and they are struggling to get focused and you say, come on, I need your attention. And you keep saying it. And then
Mm,
you get to a point where you're fed up and you just say, everybody be quiet. And you start yelling. And they're like, what is happening?
yeah.
It's like this big extreme of you're trying to be nice and you think it's kindness, but it's not being kind to yourself, nor is it being kind to the students because they deserve to know what is right and what's wrong to do in that space. They
Mm,
deserve to know it. And they do know what's right and wrong. We're just reminding you that
yeah.
this is how it's going to be in here. And I'm going to keep reminding you every single day that you try to push the line. And I'm going to make sure that I keep you safe and I keep everybody else in here safe because we have high expectations for each other and we're going to treat each other with respect.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like the answer to a lot of these classroom management problems is to go right into what you're afraid of. Like just go right into it and address it. Like if you don't like that conflict, you need to get used to having conflict. You need to get used to speaking up. If like when I was a dean of students, like I think I've said this to other podcasts, but when I was a dean of students, I knew that if I just went down this hallway, I knew that I wouldn't run to any late people. I knew I wouldn't run to any people smoking weed. I knew I wouldn't run to any couples, kissing or whatever. It would
yeah,
just be straight down this way to my office. I'm good. My day was smooth. I
right.
know if I go down this way and go a different path and kind of go around, I'm gonna run into things that will um, it's going to cause me to act. It's going to cause me to enforce my will. It's not going to be easy. And there's going to be people that are going to disagree with me. There's going to be kids that are going to like push back and give me a hard time and not listen to me. And so and then your ego gets in the way and you're like, well, I don't want to be, the dean that nobody listens to. And what if that kid, I go there and tell them to go to class and they run away from me? And all these thoughts go through your head. And so on the left, it's easy, and on the right, and it's like that poem, you choose the path that's the more difficult path, and that's what made you. That's what made you who you are. That's why things are easier for you now, and so that's what I found myself doing was like, I need to go down the harder path. If I want to get better, I have to go down the harder path. I have to go search out the problems that I know are there, and I don't avoid them, and then do my very best. And I didn't have all the answers.
No.
I have all the answers. Just be there. You have to address it and address it as best as you possibly can with the skills that you have now. But if you go the other way, you know that that's not helping. You're not being any better. You're actually getting worse. You're becoming more weaker. You're choosing the coward way out. This is my thinking.
Yeah.
I'm choosing the coward way out, and that is not making me be a better dean. That's not making me a better dean. And so it's just choosing the harder path, not coming up with excuses, just I feel like I thought about this today was like education today, right? Education, the educational system today. The educational system today, right now, is either making diamonds because there's so much pressure, and
Mhm.
people are just like, there's some diamonds out there, like, man, you are good. You are this pressure's just making everything you're just or it's like it's bursting pipes.
Yeah.
The pressure's bursting pipes and people are falling apart. And so you got two extremes. One is like you got these people that are like, man, you got a lot of answers here. You got a lot of good stuff here. And then you got these people are just their pipes are bursting. The pressure's bursting them. And there's
Yeah.
no in between right now. I feel like there's just no in between. It's very hard to find in betweens,
Mhm.
because the pressure is either making you better or eating you alive right now.
Yeah. I think that's true about education for sure. It is a lot more pressure, and as things change, and as social media, to me, this is my thought, as social media gets higher and there's more, more engagement in that, and people see more about education inside classrooms, inside schools, it's more judgment, right? And more judgment about what is the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do. But to go back to your point about pressure, I was watching something the other day. I was actually watching, I wasn't even watching. I was watching TikTok maybe, and um, the old Alabama coach. What
Yeah,
is?
yeah, I know you're talking about. Mm,
I can't even think of his name right now. I just went blank.
I know you're
Anyway,
talking about though. Yeah,
he was talking about um, this idea of transformational leadership. He was talking about versus transactional leadership. Transactional leadership in his mind was that if it's about winning or losing, right? If you win and you're doing the right thing, you're a good kid and you're doing the best and you're awesome. But when you lose, you get reprimanded. Like you're worse, you're a bad kid, you're in this section, you're smart, you're not. It's that
hmm,
dichotomy. And your relationship is based on that. These are the good kids, these are the bad kids. Or these are the good people, these are the bad people. And and in that world, you never kind of face whenever you have a challenge or something negative happens, you don't look at it as the teaching moment. You
yeah,
look at it as it's a problem, I got to get rid of it, right? Instead, a transformational person, this is what I found fascinating. And it made me think back on my own personal career about relationships and how I built myself through conflict and
hmm,
hard times
hmm,
and learning what I want to do next time. What what am I going to do differently, because that did not work out the way I wanted it to.
right.
I remember, and that's what makes you better. That's what makes you grow. That discomfort is the only path to getting better at handling situations, whether it's students, parents, your administrator, um, politics, whatever it is. When you face it and you have a dialogue about it and you learn something, you can deal with it better next time. And that's what facing that, to me, facing that is. Um, I remember vividly when I was a dean, the first couple of months, it was seventh grade, and it was a student in class that was having some difficulty. They were kind of doing some things that the teacher was a little concerned with, and it was a female. And the teacher, came to me and said, "Hey, I heard this female is going to be going out after school with somebody else. I want you to tell her parents," right? I didn't
Hmm,
see any of this. I didn't hear any of this, right? So what am I going to do, right? So, in the mind of safety at that time, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll call the parent and just say, hey, this is some information. I have a note. Here's what came out." A parent screamed at me, right? "Mind your business. This is none, you're picking on my kid, blah, 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 blah," right? "I'm going to come up there and we're going to have a conversation." And I said, "Okay, come on."
yeah, yeah.
come on up. Like we can talk through this. Like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna be like, oh no, 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 it's all right. No, come on up. We'll talk through it and we'll figure out what you want to do in the future. Like and how we can handle this better so that I keep your child safe because that's my intention. You know, it's not to pick on your kid or say they're doing something bad. It's to say, here's a situation that might not be safe. I want to let you know about it so we can partner on how to navigate this if you want to. But
Yeah.
here, I'm going to inform you. I'm going to let you know. And so those were moments that helped me grow, even though I was shaking and like,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
this is this what I should be doing? What's my person going to say? Are they going to be upset because I told this parent to come up here? I was like,
Hmm.
I had to say yes because it gave me an opportunity to grow in a space that was uncomfortable for me. And I want to learn, I still want to learn how to be more comfortable being uncomfortable
Yeah.
because that's where I'm going to grow the most. And that's, like you said, how diamonds are made
That's
in my
right.
thought.
That's right. Do you see the UFC fight? You see the UFC fight this weekend?
With Khalil?
Khalil Roundtree.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I didn't see the fight, but I heard his story afterwards. I did not know that about him.
Khalil Roundtree, right? For those that don't know, Khalil Roundtree, his dad dies when dad was murdered when he was 2 years old, right? Dad's murdered when he was 2 years old. He's growing up 20 years, whatever he is, 20 years old. He's 300 pounds. He's depressed. He's smoking cigarettes. He's an alcoholic. And he says that he's driving on the 15 or some freeway and he sees a UFC sign and that gives him hope. Like that gives him hope. Like one day that I'm going to be a UFC fighter. And he gets himself together. And now he's in a position to fight one of the baddest fighters right now, Alex Pereira,
Yeah.
for the championship, for the belt. And this happened this Saturday. And so I'm watching this fight, and I'm like, before the fight, I'm like, man, Khalil, uh, he has nothing to lose. This guy has nothing to lose. It's all upside right here. He's just happy to make it. He's just happy to
Mhm.
be here, And he gave a hell of a fight. It was such a good fight. It lasted 4 rounds, and the first 2 rounds, I thought Roundtree won the first 2 rounds, and it was a great fight. But his story and his
Mm,
example of being tenacious and going after what you want and knowing what you want and going after it and not quitting and not letting fear or your circumstances or anything get in your way. I was like, damn, that's even he lost, he still won in my mind. Like this
yeah.
guy won. If you didn't know about Khalil Roundtree, you know about Khalil Roundtree now. Now you know about him because he was in for the last week or so. He's been in all these TikTok videos. Um, that to me was impressive. Like that's an example of like let's face the hard. Let's
Hmm.
go through the hard. Here I am
Hmm.
in this position, and I'm gonna go through all the hard stuff in order for me to be in a position of greatness. And he says something too, like I don't want to wait until I get the belt for people to know my story. I need people to know my story now that there's hope, that life is beautiful. He's talking about life is
Yeah.
beautiful and you could make it. And I'm like, this guy, man, this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
This guy's amazing. It's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And I did see that. I did not know him, but he said something about being 300 pounds and smoking cigarettes, and
Mm,
he would drive up to 15 and see. Oh, man. That was like, wow, that just gave me chills. Like,
yeah.
you just decide and then go, and face it all the fear, criticism, doubt, all the emotions that go through your mind. And, I know educators face that. We all face that every single day. We're human beings.
Yeah.
And, you get to make a decision, right? Are you going to be the type of person you say you want to be? Right? Your values, the things you say you stand for, the things you say you want to be about. You get tested on those things every moment of every day, and you get to either show up
Yeah.
or not. And sometimes you don't win every time. You don't do it every time, but the more often you can do it, the better. The be- and I'm just talking theory now, but I'm just thinking about my own circumstances, right? Like having difficult parents yelling and screaming at you, being in situations where the school feels hopeless and there's very low scores, and you work with a team and you start to build something, and you see kids getting better and improving, and those are the times that it's worth it all, even though you're scared that it might not work out at all. Um, and so that's what keeps you going. But just remembering kind of those things for me, anyway. Just thinking back to those moments and using them as tools to move forward.
Yeah, same with me. Like everybody makes fun of like, oh, remember your why, know your why, or whatever. Everybody makes fun of that
Yeah.
statement. Like, remember your why, and things will be better. Ha ha ha. But honestly, I remember my why. I remember why I'm doing this. I
Mm-hmm.
remember why I'm doing this, and for every action that I have, it's for a reason. I'm doing these things for a reason. It's not just because. Like I'm just It's not just because, and I can name so many different aspects of my life and say there is a reason why I do these things. There's a reason why, I give it like my health. There's a reason why I work out in the morning, and that's because I want to see my future grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to make sure that I'm around and I'm mobile. I want to be able to play. I want to be mobile, and so there's a reason why I do all, take care of my health. I want to be around to see this happen. When it comes to social media, when I first started, when I was posting on Instagram, there was a reason why I was posting. Like, if you follow me on Instagram, it's like I try to post like motivational things
Yeah.
on Instagram. And the reason why I do that is I hope that my kids see it. I hope that my own kids see it and they see their dad in the gym, or they see their dad, posting something about like having good character. Or, I'm really, these are like really posts for my kids. Like, hey, 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 and family's important, and being courageous, and being, that it's for them to take, hey, take note, like, because I know this is one of the ways we communicate, and I'm gonna post. And that was one of the reasons why I started social media.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why, you know I don't quit social media is for the all the teachers and the educators, but then also too, to let my kids know that if I said I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I said I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to do 52 episodes in a year, and then I have to do 52 episodes.
Right.
I got to hit the 52. I'm not going to stop at 12 and be like, "Oh, it's so hard. Nobody ever wants to be on my podcast." Every time I hit somebody up, they don't even say no. It's like, "Oh, they didn't take my message. I'll hit another 10 people up.
Right.
I'll post it somewhere, and maybe somebody will be like, "Yeah, I want to be on your podcast because I said I was going to do 52 podcasts." So it's like there's a reason for everything that I do, and that drives all of my actions,
Mm-hmm.
everything, and remembering your why. You can make fun of it and not use it as a tool, or you could remember your why, and that might just motivate you to become a better person.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What you're saying is inspiring and true if you use it right. If you choose, it's a choice. It's a
Hmm.
choice. You can make fun of it or you can use it. So somebody that I listened to and read their book that helped me with those things because I struggled with it a lot of my life,
Hmm.
trying to figure out kind of why would I go to college. I had my grandmother's God rest her soul. She was trying to save me and help me. Would say, "Why do you want to go to college? Just get a job, right?"
Hmm.
Because that was her upbringing, right? She meant well and wanted me to do well, and that's what she thought was best, right? And so for me, being this kid that was kind of alone from middle school up, moved away from my family in New York and was like felt isolated. It was like how can what's going to keep me going? How can I keep going? So I read this book, and this was recently. David Goggins. I don't know if you know who that
Oh
is.
yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And his story is amazing too.
Who's gonna carry the boats?
Who's gonna
Who's
care
gonna
about-
carry the boat?
His story is amazing too.
Mhm.
You know, him just lifting himself up and picking himself up out of
Yeah.
nothing and becoming a Navy SEAL and doing all the races he does. And what he talks about that I love is how to get through tough moments. That's the part I love the most. And one of the things he talks about is remembering your past, remembering the things you've already overcome, thinking about what's why. He said, if you can't answer that question in that moment, you're probably not going to do it, right? If you can't answer that why question, why am I doing this right now? Why am I working out? And I'm not going to the
Mhm.
Olympics. I'm not going, why am I
Mhm.
working out? Why am I trying to eat healthier? Why would I try to strive for another position? Why would I put
Mhm.
myself in a situation that's very difficult at work and try to work through it for people?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, why would I do any of that? And
Mhm.
for me, it's because I think about that kid that I was scared, not having really a clear direction of what I wanted to do, um, not really having a lot of like guidance in my mind. I might have had it from my parents, but I felt like I wasn't clear about what I wanted and how I could get there and how to create the good habits that I wanted. And so, how can I keep transforming that kid? How far can I go with where I am right now? How much better
Yeah.
can I get? How much can I help other people with the knowledge I have? How much can I put myself in uncomfortable situations like being on a podcast or posting on TikTok
Mhm.
or trying to help somebody find a job or helping them navigate a tough situation at their work and giving them some words about how they might be able to navigate it. How far can I go with that from that kid that was crying in the bathroom in sixth grade saying, "Where am I?" in North
Yeah.
Carolina? And so that's what I try to tap into a lot of the times when I'm doing these things that are very uncomfortable for me. I was a kid that didn't talk at all, like
Sure.
not at all.
Sure.
Now I feel good about how I can have a conversation and really support myself and others in any space. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I was one of those kids that couldn't talk in public as well. I hated to talk in public, and like what I remember. I remember this book. It was called The Prayer of Jabez,
mm,
and it's in the Bible, right? This prayer that this person Jabez. One of the ideas was expand my territory. One of the prayers in there was expand my territory, expand my territory. And so that's something that I'd always pray, like, Lord, expand my territory. I want more. I want you to expand my territory, make my influence greater. And so, here I am at 47. I feel like my territory has been expanded and my influence has definitely grown, you know. And I feel like, it's one of those prayers where you're like, oh, I don't know if I want it. Like, I don't know how much. I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe it's better just to be simple and not,
that's
not,
right.
not like not get out there so much. You know, that's where I feel like I'm at right now. And you know, you were talking about that spirit, the David Goggins spirit of just not quitting and keep
Hmm.
on going. And if you're ever on Instagram, right? If you're ever on Instagram, there's on my Instagram, if you go to the very, very, very first post on my Instagram, there's only one picture. It's like it's me, and I'm at the beach, and I'm with my son. I think my daughter, and I'm sitting down. You can't see me, but I think they're facing this way, or it might be just me and my son. And on the caption, it's like um, something like, I just can't lose. Like I just can't lose. And so when I think about that, like sometimes I go down to the very last picture where I'm not feeling good, right? I'm not feeling good
Mm,
about what's going on, or I just remind myself, like, you just can't lose. You can't lose. Can't lose. You came from here.
Yeah.
This is your family. You got to support them, and you just can't lose. You can't lose. And it just reminds myself to keep going, you know. So like that's the only picture. If you go on my Instagram all the way to the very first picture that I ever posted, it's that one. There's one picture. It's like me on the beach. I think it's with my son. It's with my son. I don't know if my daughter's in it, but it says something like "You can't lose. You can't lose." It's just something to remind myself, like, man, you just can't lose.
No, I love that. I love that you have a visual reminder. And I think what you say is true about just, I think it's important to remember that stuff because, as you said, if I get back to education a little bit, it's just hard. It is such a hard profession. You're dealing with so many different people that have so many different demands. And um, it is, it can be taxing. It can make you doubt yourself. It can make you feel a little like you don't know what you're doing. It can make you question like your values. Um,
Yeah,
and you got to have some kind of, I believe this is what helped me in my career. You got to have some kind of anchors, some values, some, some, some reasons to remind yourself in those tough moments to either stand up and attack that tough thing or decide that you're going to push yourself or you need to grow in this area or that you're going to learn in this moment and not let it take you down and not let it make you feel jaded about the profession or kids or people.
yeah,
You've got to remember that, and that this
yeah.
is a this is a very complex thing that we're dealing with.
Mhm.
It is not one path. There's lots of mistakes to be made. It's a very complex problem,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it's not going to be just do this and it's going to be great. It's going to be do this. Something's going to happen. You're going to need to adjust. You're going to get knocked backwards. You got to keep going forward.
Yeah,
So I think that's why knowing your why or knowing your values or having some kind of anchors, a picture. I have like a vision board on my phone
yeah,
that
yeah,
that tells me reminds me when I look at my phone that this is what I'm working towards. This is what's important. This is what I have to remember, and I want it very instantaneously so that when I have that moment, and we pick up our phones all the time, I can see it. I can see it right there, and it can
yeah.
remind me very quickly. So I'm a big fan of those visual tools to help you keep going in the tough moments.
Yeah, that is being an educator right now in 2024 is very difficult. And me talking to I don't know, I'm almost probably at 50 podcasts already. Talking
Nice.
to yeah, thank you so much. I'm talking to people, 50 conversations. You know, I started off one way, thinking one thing, and then talking to different people over the last year or so. You know, talking for long periods of time, like 40-minute to an hour conversations, you kind of get a sense of like what's going on out there in different parts of the country in different states, and it's broadened my perspective of the problem that we're facing right now. And you know the it's it almost is like I realize even more that I don't have all the answers, not even close to it. When I hear other people's problems and issues, and I'm like, damn, I used to think I'd have an answer for a lot of things, and now I'm thinking like, well, shoot, you don't have the answer for a lot of things, and maybe you just have this platform that allows people to just speak their truth, and then you let them speak their truth, and then it just gets put out there, and whatever happens after that, but you don't have all the answers. You just have a platform right now. And so that's what I've come to realize, getting almost a 52 podcast is like, why am I even doing this? Like, what is this for? You know, was it for me to make money and become famous? And I have like all this, because that was the initial thought when I first
Yeah.
started. Like when I first started TikTok, oh, I'm gonna get all this money and make off of TikTok. Now make a YouTube, and now I get paid off of YouTube, and
Yeah.
and then I can retire.
Right.
Like that was the
Right.
and
Right.
then you go, my YouTube, I barely have any followers and people barely watch on YouTube. Spotify a lot better and Apple Podcasts, but YouTube with it pays hardly anybody on YouTube.
Mhm.
And so it's like, well, what are you doing? And for
Yeah.
me, when I think about it, it's like you're creating a platform for other people to speak their truth, and you just let it be, and wherever it goes, you just let it go there, and your job is just to book the next guest. Just book the next guest.
That's right. Just book the next. Keep
Just
going and
book the
keep
next, yeah.
going.
Keep
Yeah.
going, book the next guest, put it out there, talk to whomever wants to be on here, and see where it goes. And I don't know where it's gonna end. I don't know. Like I said before, my initial thing was to get 52 educators in here to talk about students with difficult behavior and talk about how to manage behavior. But then it started that way, but now it's like veering off into something else. I just don't talk about that all the time now. Like
Hmm.
in this conversation, I don't think we didn't talk once about how to manage a classroom.
No.
No,
No.
not once. I don't think we did. Talk about relationships maybe, but not how to manage a classroom. And so I don't know. Life is crazy.
It is. It is. But I'm glad you're doing it. I'm thankful for you. You definitely bring a
Thank
lot
you.
of value to the space, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of um, opportunity to have dialogue about difficult things.
Yeah.
And it is a problem what you're talking about. It is a huge issue. I know I've shared your podcast with all my first year teachers, second year teachers,
Yeah.
to say, this is good information that can help guide you through this toughness. Because I think one of the difficult things about education, and you might disagree with this for me, is sometimes you're in spaces where you don't get a lot of information. You don't get the amount of support and clarity on how to have a path for getting better in your practice.
Hmm.
Some spaces are like that. Just like any other career has spaces that are not spaces where you can grow and learn, and you have people around you that can help give you some models of what's going to be
Yeah.
best, right? And
Hmm.
so that's what this social media is for me anyway. Is, yeah, I thought about those same things of being famous and TikTok. But I tell you what, when I had a good post and a bunch of people liked it and watched it, I was scared to death. I was like, what am I gonna do when what do
Yeah. Yeah.
I do now? What do you do now? So it's always been about, how can we have better dialogue about, because there's dialogue on the other side about, how terrible teaching is and how you should get out of the profession, and how this is terrible and this is the worst. And yeah, those things are true. There are hard things, but there's ways to navigate it where you can feel good about your career. You
Yeah.
can make a difference for kids like you want. You can grow yourself and learn how to be a better human being and feel good about how you're serving more kids. And that's what this is about for me in this space, in this conversation, is how can we all get better? How can we all support each other in doing the things we said we wanted to do when we first started teaching, which is, you know, people didn't talk about how bad kids were. They talked about, I want to help kids. I want
Yeah.
kids to be successful. Where did that go? Where does that go? It's trauma.
Good question.
It's
Yeah.
trauma. I think people just have trauma and it's hard to get through it because they've had so many negative experiences without the teaching to transform them to being better. And this is an opportunity to be better.
I feel like you're making a difference. Definitely feel like you're making a difference. And funny thing, I was talking to one of my buddies about the podcast, and I was talking about how sometimes it's hard to get guests because people like don't want to come and talk about just maybe it's a hard thing to be on a podcast and talk, right? And so I was like, I just sometimes I just hit up people that maybe have a small following, and sometimes they have a big following, and sometimes I hit some really mega big followings, but they never respond. I was like, those guys never respond really. I go, but then they said, well, you got that guy Ray on your podcast once, right?
That's funny.
I was like, yeah. I go, you follow him? They're like, yeah, I like his stuff. He talks about resumes and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ray was on the
That's funny.
podcast.
That is
But it's
hilarious.
crazy because you're all the way in Maryland. We're like, you're across you're all the way. I'm over here in California. You're over there, and people still over here in California are talking about the podcast that Ray was on. Ray was on the podcast. I was like, oh yeah, I had Ray.
That's funny, flattering, and just the power of all this. And one thing you said that I loved, you talked about your Instagram. You just started posting, motivational stuff. I also did that during the pandemic, and just on Twitter, on Instagram, just post positive messages because I felt like people were in a tough space, and so you just get an opportunity to connect with people that have similar values, want to get better, want to grow, and help other people along the way, and learn yourself. Like you said, you learn, you adjust. I'm not the same as when I started either. So
Yeah,
you just grow and get better, and start to learn how to connect with people so that they can get more and you can learn more too.
that's right. Well, Ray, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your time. We talked about a bunch of stuff.
The plan was to talk about relationships, but
Yeah, I mean, it was woven in there. It was woven in there. But it's always a great conversation to have with you, and you bring a lot of value, and you have great insight, and I appreciate your time.
yeah, I appreciate you, and keep doing this. Keep going past 52 because people need it for sure.